Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about Project Hail Mary. In this story, we follow a science teacher named Rylan Grace who wakes up alone on a spaceship light years away from Earth. As his memory returns, he uncovers a mission in order to stop a mysterious substance from killing the sun, and an unexpected friendship might be the key. This is the second collaboration between Andy Weir and Drew Goddard, the author and screenwriter of The Martian. Bring in Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who are the dual directors that have brought us 22 Jump Street and the Lego Movie. Then you hire Ryan Gosling as your lead in this adapted sci-fi epic, and you got yourself a confident blockbuster. So this isn't necessarily the first time that they've sent Ryan Gosling into space, and you can imagine my expectations for this movie were at an almost low point. Now, the trailer for this movie dropped a little over 8 months ago, so that means it merely marketed in 2/3 of the films that I got to see in theaters. And after seeing the trailer multiple times, what I took away from it was that although this is the same author and screenwriter of The Martian, I felt like I was going to be getting the exact same story, but with a little different flavor. Now, don't get me wrong, I love The Martian. That turned out to be one of my favorite films of 2015. But if I'm going to be honest, I just wasn't buying into the hype that everyone else was on, because we got a similar movie like this maybe a little over a decade ago, and I just was not ready to replace that. Well, Ryan Gosling has been working his ass off to become the box office leading man because, let's face it, I mean, he hit really big with Barbie, and apparently nobody went out to go see The Fall Guy. So, I mean, my friend and fellow critic Aaron Medeiros and I definitely set some time aside, got to check this out on opening night, even though we were going to be sitting in the auditorium for like 3 hours. And while it's confidently sitting at 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, our auditorium and show sold out, and I'm just as optimistic that the fans were just as excited as we were. After getting to check the movie out for myself, I can honestly say that it was pretty good. I mean, if you like Arrival, E.T., Interstellar, The Martian, and even Sunshine, you're gonna have a blast with this one. Getting into the positives, while this isn't the most original way to structure your story, the way that we start the movie off with Gosling waking up from his heavily induced coma and is just right in the middle of his intergalactic mission really had me hooked. And I love the way that, there's just a lot about his character and a lot about what's going on that we don't know yet. We are just peeling back those layers as the movie progresses. And so we are just given these sections of flashbacks where it really cuts back and forth of what is happening in the present and him focusing on what is the mission and how he's supposed to figure that out, and also cutting back to his time on Earth and how things came about, how he received a lot of this information, and how he ended up on this suicide mission to space. Now, it does take a while for the main plot to kick in, or to get the ball rolling, if you will, but what makes a lot of the time for fleshing out Gosling's character, Rylan Grace, sounds so close to Ryan Gosling. What makes it really interesting was how he was able to hold the audience's attention, and that is all up to his well-rounded performance. He's quirky, he's smart, he's relatable, he's Ryan Gosling. It is illegal that he looks that good and be the most intelligent minds on planet Earth that would be appointed to save the world. You can't have it all, Gosling. The author did mention in an interview that by watching the trailer, it does give away the more integral plot point of the overall story. And I'm going to take a wild guess that he was talking about Rocky, the rock-like, spider-like alien creature that Gosling ends up befriending, and he is just all over the marketing. I wish I got the little cute popcorn bucket that they got at the movie theater. I mean, he's weird, but he's cute. Once Grace and Rocky get acquainted and begin working together to save each other's worlds, the focus on their relationship and what they learn from each other become the heart and soul of the film. The dynamic and the power of friendship is a total shift from the reality at play here, but it was rather sweet, poignant, and just frequently funny. Although there is a lot of humor to be adored here, there are real-world stakes and darker themes that come with the exposition of a catastrophe that mankind faces. Even when Grace stumbles on an obstacle, you get to see the defeat and the vulnerability of Gosling's performance in his more subtle expressions. We got Sandra Huller here, who plays Ava Stratt, and she is one of the showrunners of the Hail Mary project, and she may come off very cutthroat and blunt, but she's a realist, so the information that she grounds Grace with just adds that bleakness, that tension of what is happening to the son, how much time they have left, and the call to action, the sacrifices they must make and come to terms with. There's even a scene where they're doing karaoke, and she decides to sing that one Harry Styles song, which adds a whole different context to how we interpret those lyrics, and I'm never going to hear Sign of the Times the same way again. On the technical side, I do appreciate the money shots when it comes to space movies, and those moments include the approach to the planet of Tau Ceti and the sublime sequence where Grace is in the Petrova line. And I bet those shots looked spectacular and breathtaking, especially in IMAX. The gimmick that involved zero gravity, especially when Ryan Gosling is getting tangled up in his rope, was such a hoot. The production design, the art design, the practical and visual effects, especially involving Rocky and Grace's ships, the interior and exterior designs, just felt so very well lived in and gargantuan. Getting into my mixed opinions, while I laughed at a lot of the iconic Ryan Gosling humor, as well as the back and forth between Grace and Rocky, I felt like they needed to bring it down a notch. There was just a lot of sequences where it felt like it was being too funny, and it almost took me out from actually believing that these characters were in any real danger or peril when it counted the most. There were some elements from the flashbacks that I wish they got to flesh out a little bit more, like more of his life on Earth and some of his motives that led up to some of the decisions that he ends up making later on in the film, or maybe some of the relationships of his co-workers, like Sandra Huller's character. Like, I like that they didn't have much of a romance or love interest type of thing going on, but there was just something about their characters interacting with one another, especially with the situation at hand, that I wish they got to know each other as characters just a little bit more. Or even with the security detail, Carl, played by Lionel Boyce, he had such great scenes with Gosling, and I wish we got more of that. Or even like the astronauts that went into space with Gosling, the engineer and the captain, played by Milana Maintrub and Ken Leung. I wish we got more kind of back and forth with them and, Ryan Gosling's character to kind of warrant some of those emotions when they are put into peril. For a 2-hour and 36-minute feature, I did feel like some sections dragged a little more than others, especially when it meandered on some of the science and some of the planning and more exposition about what's going on here. And you can say that The Martian might have those similar issues about the humor and the pacing, but I prefer how The Martian managed to balance out those elements a little more than this one. And speaking of pacing, I did have some personal issues which might feel more of like a nitpick, but I just wish that there were some ways that I could edit and trim down some scenes that kind of overstayed its welcome, like the multiple ending syndrome in the final 20 to 10 minutes of the movie. Like, my goodness. I know this is based off of a book, but it doesn't need to be Lord of the Rings. I mean, just choose one. Choose one. Overall, this turned out to be a much different movie than I was expecting it to be, and after staying away from all of the trailers that came after the teaser, I think it paid off pretty well. And like Oppenheimer, while a lot of the science may have gone over my head, it has given me much more of a reason to watch this movie again and again and grasp onto some of the ideas that I missed on first viewing. I just feel like I get a lot of my information more and more if I have my subtitles on, my closed captions. I mean, I had to watch Tenet like 7 times in order to understand what was going on in Christopher Nolan's head with that movie. I am so curious to see as to what Phil Lord and Christopher Miller are going to do with their next Andy Weir adaptation. Project Hail Mary might not be my personal favorite sci-fi epic, but it sure is a bold, charming, and heartfelt story about humanity, bravery, and friendship across the stars. Well, all right, guys, that's all I got to share about that movie. Go ahead and check it out on the biggest screen possible. Look forward to more reviews. I'm Jaren Ugban. Now we're going to want to thank you guys again for taking some time out of the day to hear me talk some movies. I'll see you guys at the theater. In the meanwhile, take care.